While I'm putting together a few wild videos for you all today, let's just take it easy for a bit and talk about the most recent news from Glitch, and also go over some events that are directly tied to the final episode. For a huge number of Digital Circus fans, the recent developments brought absolutely insane levels of excitement because Glitch finally gave a response to all the distributors, giving pretty much the whole of Europe the opportunity to watch the final episode of the Digital Circus ahead of the global release. 30 new countries were officially confirmed, and it genuinely feels like fans from Spain are the most thrilled, since their messages and tweets were the ones I kept coming across the most. 52 countries will officially be able to screen the long-awaited finale of the incredible Digital Circus in theaters. However, there are still quite a lot of countries that haven't reached an agreement for an early screening just yet. The issue is that countries like Indonesia carry massive populations, and I'm pretty confident that a huge number of Digital Circus fans actually come from regions like Asia or Africa, for example. I truly believe that local distributors in countries where early screenings haven't been approved yet will manage to work out an agreement with Glitch, because in that case, the Digital Circus will fully lock in its status as a worldwide phenomenon recognized on every single continent. Honestly, another reason is that I genuinely want as many people as possible to catch the Digital Circus before the global release, because that would completely wipe out any anxiety about potential spoilers. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments about expanding the list of countries that get early screenings. Also, Level Up Expo is coming around soon, and we might end up getting something new out of it, though that's not guaranteed by any means.
Now let's get into some of the details surrounding the final episode. First of all, there's one particular detail that's really important to point out. Episodes 8 and 9 should really be experienced as a single episode. And the fact that Last Act is going to consist of not just one, but 2 episodes only confirms that way of thinking. Today, we're going to look at episode 9 through the lens of 3 specific events. The ending of episode 8, which obviously turns all of the characters' plans completely upside down. The teaser that was shown after the release, where we get a glimpse of the first few minutes following everything that took place, and the trailer, which gives a much more detailed look into what's actually going on in the new episode. The ending of episode 8 flipped things around so dramatically that there are genuinely a lot of possible directions the final episode could go. Some people are throwing out theories that the characters, or at least some of them, will end up abstracting. Personally, I don't really buy into that. Others are fully convinced they'll find a way to escape. Some think this is simply what the rest of their endless existence is going to look like, and there are plenty of other different assumptions and theories floating around out there. Since pretty much everything seems to point toward Jax being one of the central, if not the most central character of episode 9, today I'd like to focus less on the events surrounding him or where all of it is heading, and more on really understanding what he's feeling inside and how that's going to affect both him and the people around him. Of course, we won't be leaving out the Digital Circus as a whole or the other characters either. I already mentioned this is a pretty relaxed video, so go ahead and get comfortable and let's get into it. If in that final scene they looked surprised, just a couple of minutes later you can see absolute despair written across their faces. Even Kinger, who typically either looks completely unhinged or totally calm, now looks genuinely frightened, despite that they're all trying to piece together what happened. They're scanning what's left of the Digital Circus, desperately searching for at least some kind of answers. Everyone is looking in a different direction, trying to process what just went down. However, when we shift our focus to Jax, things look completely different. Right now, this is essentially the most critical moment the Digital Circus has ever faced, where it's not even about escaping anymore, but simply about figuring out how to survive in this place. And obviously, in a moment like this, it matters deeply to not let things spiral out of control and to not pull away from the others because of your fears or anything else. Yet Jax does exactly that, and this is where understanding his motivations becomes really important. It seemed like starting from episode 5, Jax had slowly begun to change. With each new episode, it was becoming clearer and clearer to him that he actually matters to the people around him. Wait, don't you want to come with us? This could be our one real shot at finally leaving all of this behind. Despite all of that, Jack still clung to his personal life philosophy and kept wearing that cool guy mask. You'd think that after episode 7, everything should have shifted, since at that point it became completely obvious to absolutely everyone that surviving alone in this place just isn't possible. But at the very start of episode 8, we see the exact same Jax as before. Then something happens that a lot of people clearly weren't expecting. He's right, though. What? Gangle, it doesn't matter what could have happened. Hey, that goes for you, too. Huh? Listen, we're not going to let you go wandering off somewhere alone and abstracting or anything like that. You're a pain sometimes, but you're still one of us. He was just one step away from finally becoming genuine and dropping the armor that has been holding him back for such a long time. However, this pattern has already taken such a deep root inside his head that Jax simply can't picture how to exist any other way. Jax has turned into a prisoner of his own image, and because of that, he's no longer capable of accepting help from anyone. This is just part of the reason why, after episode 8, Jax's situation could become significantly worse.
Remember that scene in the cafe? You know, things were just going fine around here until you and Zubul showed up. Nothing. Okay. Jax directly points the blame at Pomni and Zubul for everything that's currently happening inside the digital circus. This tells us that in Jax's mind, they are the ones responsible for all of it, which means no amount of conversation or anything else is going to be enough to warm up their relationship. On one hand, a shared enemy in the form of Kane and the mutual goal of escaping the digital circus at least pushed Jax somewhat toward functioning as part of the group. But now Kane is gone. The digital circus is teetering on the edge of complete collapse, and the future of all the characters is deeply uncertain. Under conditions like these, anyone's mental state can begin to crack. And since we've already established that Jax is the most mentally vulnerable character of the bunch, his psychological condition is under very serious threat. I'm more than certain that right at the start of episode 9, Jax will distance himself off to the side, and even the slightest mention of his name is going to trigger an outburst of aggression not unlike what we witnessed back in episode 6. Jax is going to lay the blame for everything that happened on Pomni and Zubul, and everyone else will be at fault too in his eyes because they kept supporting them the whole time. In the world that Jax has constructed for himself, there is simply no way out of the digital circus, and after episode 8, he has become even more cemented in that belief. All of this brings us to the conclusion that the character we should genuinely be the most concerned about right now is Jax. Now, let's talk about the ending itself, because there's also a lot of really significant stuff tucked away in there. Wait, I think I accidentally got rid of Kane. Literally, the very first thing the characters immediately picked up on was the complete disappearance of censorship, which used to always function perfectly without any issues. But that's just an interesting observation that once again underlines the fact that Kane no longer has any influence over the digital circus. And this is where things get genuinely fascinating, because we all remember that Kinger directly stated that Kane is essentially the creator of the digital circus. I see. He's a highly advanced AI, and this is his world, one that he built entirely from nothing. So naturally, he has control over all of it. C&A was dedicated to developing creative AI. They weren't making games or shows. Their one and only goal was working with artificial intelligence. Following the success of Kane, they placed him into a specific system where he began constructing his own world. Kane chose a circus because that particular idea was essentially fed into him. And in that case, the digital circus should be a place that is entirely under Kane's control. We get to see the actual environment where Kane was originally placed, and that is the void, which is precisely why when Pomni ended up there, Kane explained it's simply a space where a new location would eventually take shape.
In that case, after Kane's deletion, there should have been absolutely nothing left where the digital circus once stood. But instead, what we see is only a partially destroyed circus. This leads us toward the idea that Kane might actually still be alive. And that would make a lot of sense, because first of all, it seems pretty unlikely that the final episode would unfold without Kane being involved. And secondly, it feels to me like Scratch or someone else among the developers had already anticipated a scenario like this and made sure that even in the event of a deletion, Kane would still remain inside the system in some form, with the possibility of being brought back. Considering that the characters are capable of creating objects inside the circus on their own, even without Kane, since that ability is embedded directly into their code, it's very much possible that they will attempt to bring Kane back in order to restore the digital circus, while perhaps making some adjustments to it so that it no longer carries that aggression and fixation with his adventures. If Kane is truly gone for good, then as time goes on, the digital circus will just keep falling apart more and more.